Craig, great to have you with us. You're a gentleman that certainly achieved a stellar career in golf. 23 victories, and they've come right around the world, which is amazing. National Opens, and of course, right here in New Zealand with the New Zealand Open at Paraparaumu Beach, which we're incredibly proud of as a club, because I guess looking at your career and the success of it, it's your history being etched in our history, which we're incredibly pleased with. So, Craig, thanks for joining us. How's everything looking for you over in Sydney?
Oh, not a problem. I'm enjoying it. New Zealand's always been very kind to me. Sydney's very nice. We've got a clear day today. We've had no corona overnight, which is fantastic, and we'll be getting back to life a little bit sooner rather than later, I would imagine.
Fantastic. So, Craig, you have had an amazing career, but let's wind it right back to the start. I noticed you're born in Victoria and the western suburbs of Melbourne, which I assume was quite footy orientated. How did a young fella out west become interested in golf?
Well, I was very much in Aussie rules. I was Western Bulldogs or Footscray back in those days. And, my grandparents are Scottish, and I used to spend a lot of time with my grandparents, and I was my grandfather's shadow. And he used to love going playing golf, so did my gran. And, I just took up the game as a 5-year-old and, I just loved it.
Okay. Well, what was your first club? Where'd you start playing?
I first started at Sunshine, and I've got a photo when I was a baby, Mum holding me when I was literally a few weeks old, and the golf club used to be across the creek from us, and the flags are in the background in the distance, and they moved that golf course to about 3 k's away, and I joined when I was 10 years of age. I had a VGA official, Tom Duguid, to actually change my birth certificate or my birth date so that I could actually join the golf club. And, so I was 13 years old at that time, but I was really only 10, and they allowed me to join. We had a whole heap of juniors at that point, and that's how I got into the game. Very young, very much into the game, loved practicing to improve. And I felt that every time I practiced that I actually did improve. And, that was one of the good things about, our game. You have to be patient and, just try and wear the game down so you can actually get to a stage where you're good enough and got enough confidence in yourself to hit all the shots you need to hit.
And speaking of being good enough, at what stage did you start realising that you could actually play the game and play the game quite well?
Probably when I was about 17. I started to play consistently well, and I would be paired in the professional groups when the tournaments used to come to WA when I moved across to WA, and you'd be get paired with players like Ian Baker Finch, Ozzie Moore, and be Norman. It was the best players in the world, Wayne Grady, and you could test your game. You could see your game wasn't quite at their level, but it was very close. And I felt as though that, when I got to 19 and I won a Southwest Open at Bunbury, and that was against, the players I just mentioned, and, I would have won $24,000 back in the early or mid 1980s. So, I felt as though I was ready to play then.
It's quite interesting you say that, because speaking to a couple of the other golfers that I've spoken to in this series, Michael Long, for example, out in Western Australia now, he mentioned if you couldn't beat, those other players in your pennant team, well, why did you think you were going to beat people, on bigger stages? And certainly back here as well with Michael Campbell and Phil Tautorangi, they were almost competing amongst themselves in that amateur era, and that was spurring them on. So I mean, you're coming up against Norman, Baker Finch. I mean, that's some pretty big names in golf in general, let alone Australian golf.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a great opening to professional golf. I remember playing with Baker Finch in Nedlands Masters, and, I think Ozzie Moore might have won it and Finchy finished second. And a couple of weeks later, Baker Finch is leading the Open Championship at St Andrews against Tom Watson. So, you can really know where your game is against those other guys you're playing with. And, it was great to have all the different states involved and New Zealand. They used to come across and we used to play, interstate series, and the Kiwis would come across. And you needed that as a young guy coming through so that you could actually know where your game was in relation to everyone else.
Now, at what stage? We were talking about the amateur career there. At what stage did you make the decision to go professional? Did you think you were ready?
Well, it was when I was 19. I actually played in the New Zealand amateur at
Okay.
Mount Maunganui. In the 72-hole stroke play, I actually finished tied for the lead, and I lost the playoff. However, that gave me a lot of confidence to go forward as well. And I had a really good year when I was 19. And at the end of the year, I turned professional with Brett Ogle. And we weren't going to. Australia wasn't going to go in the Eisenhower the following year, and that meant that I would have had to wait around another 4 years after that just to play Eisenhower. And I said, well, I might as well turn professional. And the first couple of years were difficult. Everyone is going to find it difficult. And then I happened to win a tournament in Canada, the Players Championship up there. And a couple of weeks later, I won the New South Wales Open at the Australian. Played with Lee Trevino and Roger Davis in the final day. And, and then I was off and away.
So you played the New Zealand Amateur there at Mount Maunganui, which is a fantastic track.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I actually was superintendent there before Paraparaumu Beach, so it's a course I know well. Was that would have been your first trip to New Zealand?
Yes.
Did you come back for New Zealand Opens during those early years of turning professional?
I did play a couple of the early ones. I played at the Grange. I played at Titirangi. I love Titirangi as a golf course. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Just beautiful golf course to get out on, the ferns and just the design of it, even though it was a little bit shorter. I think Curtis Strange come out that year and he might have had a hole-in-one on one of the par threes. And, the golf course was, out in front of me. It was a lovely golf course.
Yeah, it's an Alistair Mackenzie course that I see now you get it into design. So it's probably no surprise that you enjoyed your early experiences at Titirangi.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So you win the New South Wales Open and you head up to Europe. Was that the plan?
Yeah, that's right. Because that was what all the other previous Aussies had done. Grades, Aussie Moore, Finchy, Harwood. They'd all played in Australia and then they all went to Europe, and it was a stepping stone before getting to America, because obviously America was like going to the Olympics and the European tour was like going on the Commonwealth Games. So that's how you could sort of, justify the two. But my game was actually suited more for Europe than America, because the hard and fast fairways that they had, and the golf courses were tree lined rather than big mounds on the sides where the spectators could actually, sit. It was just a different type of golf. I probably, in hindsight, I should have stayed in Europe a lot longer, like Michael Campbell did.
Okay, I mean, you had some great success up there. I see you were top 10 on the money list in all 3 seasons that you enjoyed up there, and you won the Italian Open, the German Open, and the Scottish Open, which would have been a proud achievement for your grandparents, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fantastic day. I remember it very clearly. I played with Sevi Ballesteros in the final group, and I've got a great photo walking onto the green on the 72nd hole at Glen Eagles, and all the crowds behind us. And it's a pretty special time or moment in my life.
Were your grandparents living up in Scotland, or they immigrated down to Australia?
No, they were in Australia, but my grandmother was from Gokodi, which is the bay just south of St Andrews, yeah. And my grandfather's from Gourock, which is up near Glasgow. So I can understand the Scots. A lot of people have trouble with them, but I can understand, not a problem.
So you talked about the analogy between the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics. Well, obviously you had your sights on the Olympics, like everyone does, and in these terms, it's the US Tour, which you went across to in '92, and you joined the big circus, and I guess you were right up there and amongst it.
Yeah, look, it was a conscious decision. I felt as though when I was back in that time that my game was good enough. As I say, you said that I won, 4 events when, in a couple of years. I won £1 million in 4 years. And I felt that America was the right time for me then. And it was in '92. I played really well early on in the year, and the Players Championship, I had a chance of, finishing right up there. I think I finished 6th that week. I hit it in the water on the 16th hole, going for the green in 2. I remember trying to hit a draw into the green when I never hit a draw in my life. So I should have probably hit a fade into the green and maybe made my birdie that way. But anyway, I made a double bogey or whatever it was, a bogey. But, it was the right time. Our daughter had just been born as well in '92. So it was much easier to play in one country versus going through Europe, where every week we'd have to go through customs control, and it was a lot harder to travel through Europe in those days.
Now, I think you had visited the Masters maybe in the late 80s, but 1992, you not only visited the Augusta National Golf Club, you were leading after the third round, heading into the last round. I mean, it must be an incredible feeling just to drive up Magnolia Lane. For all us amateurs, I guess it's a lifelong dream, not only to head up Magnolia Lane, but to find yourself in the last pairing. Talk us through that whole experience.
The funny thing about that is I actually went through the workers' entrance. I didn't actually drive up Magnolia Lane until later on. Augusta is a tournament that I've always loved getting up early for as a youngster, just like you guys would have, to watch the tournament on the TV. And it was a golf course that I knew really well. And when I got to the Augusta in 1990 was my first year, I felt as though I could play it. And then I felt as though the golf course was ready to be, go out and score really well. They hadn't cut the rough around the water hazards and things like that. I'm thinking, well, I can get around here. As soon as you come to Thursday morning, all the banks had been shaved and the ball would run into the water. It was a big learning curve playing the first one. And then the second one, you come back, a very similar thing had happened. They let the grass grow up until, Wednesday afternoon, then they cut it down for Thursday. But you knew what you were going to expect on that Thursday morning. Where the flag placements are going to go, they were very similar to the year before. And everyone does the same type of things. Plays the same shots, the bogeys at the same time. And you had to have a game plan for Augusta. And, my game plan was to keep it under the hole all the time. And I played really well tee to green. I didn't putt very well on that Sunday.
Who were you paired with in the final pairing on the Sunday?
I was paired with Freddie Couples. And and Baker Finch was paired with Raymond Floyd, the group in front. Now, I think if Ian or I were paired together, one of us may have won that event. But obviously, ifs and buts and couldas and shouldas, and it's just one of those things that if I was a little bit older, I might have been able to handle the crowd a little bit better. They did get very vocal and got into me mentally as far as playing the tournament when they should have had no reason to get in there at all.
It's tough, yeah. I did read that, and it's something I was going to discuss with you because Freddie's a favourite, whether you're an Australian or a New Zealander or clearly in his own backyard, America. So he had a lot of support, but yeah, I did read that they were particularly vocal towards yourself and trying to will Freddie over the line.
Yeah, they were, and they did. They would squeak in the chairs, and when they sit on the side of the green and you're over the putt, they're rocking backwards and forwards in the chairs. And, when I was going to the 17th hole in the third round, I'm playing with Woosnam, and one of the spectators stopped us as we were trying to get to the tee and said, why don't you let one of the Americans win? And Woosie told him in no uncertain terms on where to go. And, that was just what was happening. And after the tournament itself, I had Davis Love actually come up to me and he said, look, don't take it personal. He said, it happened to me a few weeks earlier in the LA Open. And that gave me a lot of comfort in knowing that it's, look, not us versus them. It's just a Freddie thing.
Okay. So, yeah, it was a near miss there, I guess, in hindsight. But you had a good look. You're in the last pair and clearly you're enjoying yourself up in America. I wanted to come back, though, to Australia. I noticed you were very strong in your team events. You represented Australia both in Dunhill Cups and World Cups. We spoke earlier about your amateur team events that you played for your state. Focusing on the President's Cup, you played in 3 President's Cup, but it's the 1998 one, I guess, that's the absolute standout. It's the only international team to have won the event. It was a massive thing for Australia. I was actually working at Royal Melbourne during that period, and a inside the ropes look at things. How did the week look for you, and what were your memories of that time?
Oh, that was a fantastic week. Peter Thomson was our captain. Wayne Grady was our assistant captain. and we had a lot of guys playing really good golf. However, the American team on paper were a better team than what we were, but we were a team and they were a bunch of individuals, and that's as simple as it was. And our guys played exceptional golf, and maybe the Americans didn't play as good as what they normally would have. However, Peter Thomson did the right thing by everyone. We all went in the bus each day. We come home in the bus each day. We ate breakfast together, lunch together, dinner together. And the way you had all the four balls and foursomes set up, everyone was comfortable on who they were playing with. I played with Shigeki Maruyama as my partner, and we had a great time that week. And, we're very good friends.
I've still got that wonderful memory on 18 East, or was 18 Composite as well, where Maruyama chipped in. And
no, that was me.
So you chipped in.
I chipped in, yeah.
And it's incredible. He was in broken English saying, "Mr. Parry, very, very good." It was just wonderful. You guys are embracing. You could speak English, he couldn't, but it was a universal language that you were both speaking. It was great.
Yeah, he was a fantastic partner to have. And, we'd played quite a bit in Japan prior to the President's Cup. And, we were comfortable with each other. I could speak a little bit of Japanese, not much. And he had his broken English at that time. Now he speaks perfect English. And, he putted really well that week as well. I was reading the greens very, very clearly I knew what line on the greens to putt and where to hit it around the hole. And, I just had to point him in the right direction and say, look, hit it right of the hole, just under the hole, and we'll just have a chance of making a birdie that way. And that's really what it boiled down to. Just putting him in the right position on the hole. And as you know, Royal Melbourne, you've got to always play from under the hole.
Yeah, so a little bit like Augusta, I guess you were mentioning, and perhaps Titirangi mentioned earlier. What was different about that team? It's been interesting how many Presidents' Cup we've had now, and the internationals have come close, I guess, on a number of occasions. But what was different with that team? You've talked about a little bit of that camaraderie and the pairings.
Yeah, I think it was, obviously we got a little bit of luck, and you do need to have a little bit of luck. The American team is always going to be very strong, and they're used to playing those type of formats with the Ryder Cup every second year, and they've got the President's Cup, in the other year. So they get used to playing four ball and foursome, and they go out and play, and they use the same golf ball. A lot of them use the Titleist golf ball, whereas the international team is a little bit different. You've got people from different countries, not necessarily speaking all English, and not everyone uses the same type of golf ball. So when you have to play in a President's Cup, and you might have to use a Bridgestone ball because your partner is using a Bridgestone ball, you have to get across that really quick. And the golf ball is going to react different to what your golf ball was. I was using a Maxfly in my early days, and to try and use either a Titleist or a Bridgestone or a Nike or whatever it may be, there was a change.
Yeah. So 1999, you're back in Scotland at the Open Championship. Played at Carnoustie, which was officially known that week as Carnoustie.
Yeah.
The winning score was +6, so it played incredibly difficult. And again, you find yourself heading into the third round and fourth round, and coming down the stretch, and you get another little glimpse at the top of Everest.
Yeah, I was playing with Van der Velde the final round, and I think I started about 3 shots behind him in going into the final round. And I went out and I might have made 1 or 2 birdies on the front 9, and I caught level with Jean, and I think around about the 9th hole, and the 10th or 11th, I got to 1 in front. And I'm thinking, well, here we go, this is my time. And the golf course just beat me up on the way in. I made a bogey, a double bogey, and a triple bogey. I missed out in the playoff by a shot. So, while Jean was having his difficulties on 18, I felt as though I threw it away as well.
And I mean, yeah, I was in the gallery that day as well, actually, and watching what played out on 18 was incredible. You had an armchair seat, but I guess you were probably concentrating on your own situation rather than Jean with his shoes off in the burn. But talk us through that whole 18th. I mean, it was.
Well, the thing is with the 18th hole, the only way you could play it was into a little bit of breeze and a little bit of slight rain. It was like a drizzle, and the only way he could get across the rough and get to the fairway is a hit driver. And he hit a good drive, and it just went out to the right a little bit. It was near the burn, but it was fine. He's in the middle of the golf course. The problem that happened after that is had to hit towards the out of bounds, and he had to get it across the burn at the green, and he had to favour the right hand side, which he did. He hit a 2-iron, I believe, and it just leaked a little bit, and it hit the grandstand on one of the uprights on the grandstand. And I remember going up and actually seeing where it actually hit. And if you've got two round objects hitting each other, to get it to go across the other side of the burn was absolutely amazing. But what had also happened, as it had been raining, anyone who plays golf, and if the grass gets long and it's wet, the club will wrap around the shaft and it'll turn it over. And his third shot, he would have hit straight left and gone out of bounds, and that would have been absolutely horrid. So, when he plays his third shot, he actually just deaccelerates on it rather than actually commits to it. Even if he committed to the shot and tried to hit it in the bunker, he would have been able to get it out of the bunker and hit it on the green, 2-putt, see you later, he wins. But it just one thing led to another. And, a lot of the commentators at the time never gave him credit for, what he was trying to do. They didn't, they're sitting in a booth up in the out of broadcast area, and they don't know it's raining because it doesn't show up on TV. And when you're out there, you know that you have to play a little bit different every other time you played the hole.
So you would have played, and I'm trying to think back myself. I mean, you would have played your second shot probably before.
Yeah, that's right. I played my second shot, and it just leaked into the bunker on the side of the green there, and this little pop bunker there. And then Jean hits his third shot, and it goes into the hazard. And because I was already over the other side of the green, I was over near the grandstand. The ball had gone into the hazard, and he was lying on a little bit of sand, but the tide was actually coming in, and the ball was oscillating and it was going lower and lower. The water level was about halfway up the ball. So instead of walking around the green to get to the ball, he would have been better off walking straight to the ball. He would have seen that he could have played it, and he was far enough back from the bank. Because it was only about 4 foot high, he would have been able to actually play it out, because the time was taking so long for him to get to the ball and take his shoes off. Now all of a sudden the ball is underwater, the top of it, so it makes it very difficult to get out. And then he drops it and hits it into the bunker. And his ball's next to mine, and mine was the first shot to play, so I happened to hold my bunker shot, and now I'm one behind the guys already in the top hour.
Right.
And now Jean has to get up and down to get in the playoff, and he hold about a 4 or 5 footer to do it. So it was bittersweet for him. I felt as though I threw it away as well. So.
Well, let's come back into this hemisphere. Still on a links course, but this time it's probably a rare occurrence. A links course down here in the southern hemisphere, Paraparaumu Beach. The 2002 New Zealand Open, which is possibly one of our most famous New Zealand Opens that the club's held, and in some ways probably one of our most infamous, because it included one Tiger Woods, who was the world #1 golfer at the time and possibly in his peak. Talk us through your memories of that week. So you hadn't been to New Zealand for a number of years.
Normally early in January I don't normally play. The reason being is the kids were young, the school holidays. I never felt like going away and playing when they're on school holidays. So I'd try and take holidays with the kids. We've got 3 kids, and that's why I never really played in January. It was my manager, Tony Buffler, that more or less taught me into playing, and it was our wedding anniversary for Jenny and I. So Jen come across with me. We left the kids at home, and I hadn't done a great deal of practice, so my expectations weren't that great as far as playing the tournament. But as soon as I got to the golf course, I loved the golf course. I always loved playing links golf, and
Was that your
you know,
first visit? Was that your first
it was
visit?
my first visit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And to show you how relaxed it was, when I went home after, I think it was the first round, I left my golf shoes at the hotel we were staying at, and I come back for the second round, and I'm out at the practice fairway, and I realised I haven't got my golf shoes. And then Scotty Gardner, who I'm size 8.5, and Scotty's about a size 11, said, "I got a pair." So I ended up using Scotty Gardner's golf shoes, and it was either the second round or the third round. I think it was the second, and played in someone else's golf shoes in the second round.
Shot 69.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you're talking about the weather up at the Open Championship. I mean, the weather that week, well, particularly on the weekend, was horrible as well. The rain came in, and it can't have been comfortable dealing with that, as well as everything else that was going on that week. I mean, what was it like having Tiger Woods in the field? I know you've played. Obviously, we talked about the President's Cup and played up in America. You would have played with him, but I guess having him in New Zealand was an amazing deal, and people probably got a little bit more carried away than they would at a normal tournament. How did you find it?
Yeah, well, see, I go back with Tiger till he was 17 years of age. I played in the Scottish Open at Carnoustie. I think it was in about 95. And then when Tiger moved to Florida in Orlando, that was the same estate that I lived in Isleworth. So I used to play and practice with Tiger. So I was very comfortable with him at golf tournaments. And, when he was going to the New Zealand Open, it was no different to what I would normally do in a week in Orlando, go out and play, practice. You'd always go out and have a hit with him. So I was always comfortable with Tiger in the field, even though he's the best player in the world and very rarely you beat him. If you beat him, you normally won.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks to me, just looking at the scores and my memories of the event, you're just sitting in behind the leaders most of the way. You've got I think it was Stephen Leaney. Yeah, Stephen Leaney was leading going into the last. So talk us through that last round. What's your memories going into that last round, and when did Craig Parry decide that he was going to pounce?
It was probably on the back nine. I just stayed in the tournament on the front nine. I don't remember doing anything crazy on the front nine. I kept the pressure up on the guys. Cambo was playing really well. Cambo, it's always harder playing your own National Open than playing someone else's, because you want to win your own Open, so much that there's more inbuilt pressure when you're playing at home versus playing in, a foreign Open. That's still a big event, but, your own Open means a great deal. And, with the crowds that we had that week, they obviously all wanted Cambo to win. And I just snuck in the back door that week.
Well, yeah, Cambo missed that. Unfortunately, he missed that little putt on 17, and
yeah,
he had to make an eagle on the last, which he just narrowly failed to do. But
I'm thankful he did.
Yeah, so I have read since then that you have a lot to thank the New Zealand Open for. In fact, you're quoted as saying 4 million reasons to thank the New Zealand Open for.
Yeah, that's right. Because it got me into the World Golf Championship event. It's the Harley, which happened to be my first PGA Tour win, where I won $1 million US that week. And otherwise, I wouldn't have got into that field because of Tiger playing. So, it's brought me a lot of money in New Zealand. And not to mention, I've always loved going there. I think it's one of the prettiest countries in the world.
What did you do that night after the New Zealand Open? What was celebrations like in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I had the gentleman that looked after Ben Hogan in Australia, who happened to be a Kiwi, Earl Thomas. I don't know if you know Earl, but we went down to the harbour, and Jenny and I and Earl and another friend of his, we had dinner on the harbour, and it was lovely.
Nice. So you went up and you won the World Series, the World Championship up at the NEC.
Yeah.
And that puts you back into the US Tour?
Yeah, because I've got a 2-year exemption on the PGA Tour. So that kept me over there for a couple more years. My plan was I was actually going to go to Japan because I won the Japan Open in 97, and that gives you a 10-year exemption. But the extra 2 years that I got for winning the World Golf Championship event kept me in America for quite a bit longer. So, it was just one of those things. One thing led to another, and then all of a sudden, I have another good week at Doral.
Yeah, so talk us through Doral. That was another pretty reasonable paycheck. Here we go. Craig Parry's having what do they call this? An Indian summer in terms of your golfing career.
It was one of those things. I played at the South Australian Open the week earlier and played really well. I think I finished about third, but my game was really right on. And South Australia was very similar to what the weather does in Florida. It's a very strong breeze. The Aussies do, relatively well there in the past. We've had Norman win there. We've had Steve Elkington win there. And it's similar to playing, golf in Australia or New Zealand. And when I went over there, I arrived. My brother was on the bag. He was caddying for me. My nephew, he come over. He was just turned 18. So he was actually sleeping on the floor at the Doral Resort. And we slept through the alarm. And then all of a sudden, my brother woke us up and said, look, you got 15 minutes to get to the tee. We're playing on the 10th hole. If we're on the first hole, it would have been a lot harder to get and make the tee time. So I just grabbed a pair of trousers, a shirt, some socks, and went to the tee. I was able to hit a couple of balls because the guys were going at the green for their second shot. So the tee time was just delayed by a couple of minutes. And met him on the tee. I only had 3 golf balls to get me through 18 holes at Doral, and there's water everywhere. So you better hit it pretty good. The very first hole that we played, which was the 10th hole, I hit a really good 3-wood, and I've got 214 yards to the flag. Because I haven't warmed up, I can't hit, a 3-iron to the green. So I ended up laying up being the chicken that I am and ended up making my par. But I got around that round. I think I might have been 1 over or level par, but there was quite a windy day. And, I played extremely well that week.
Look, I've heard you're a real good character to kind of hang out with. And just as we're talking there, I'm kind of getting that feeling that Craig Parry perhaps plays his best golf when he's most relaxed. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, very much so. When I had sports psychs, I would speak to a sports psychologist, Noel Blundell, and occasionally I'd speak to him and say, look, I'm feeling like my game's really good. And what he would say is, look, go boating, go camping, go fishing, go do something, get away from the game. And then when you come back, you're more relaxed, you're fresh, you think clearer, you're just ready to go. And that's what I've always been able to do, get away from our game and, just think about what I need to do, how I'm going to play the golf course or tournament if I've been there before, and, just go out and play.
What was it like to win at Royal Melbourne in 2005 there, I think it was, in the Heineken Classic, a course that you've spoken about just before, been quite fond of?
Yeah, my days go back to when I was a 5-year-old, when I first went out to Royal Melbourne to watch the guys play. I was sitting next to Jane Locke at the back of the 18th green, and I remember the golf course extremely well. And to win around Royal Melbourne, it shows you can actually play the game, I think, because you've got to be able to hit all the shots. You've got to have the patience to play Royal Melbourne. You've got to have the strategy to play a golf course like Royal Melbourne. You've got to have the touch around the greens. You've got to have putting. You just got to have everything about playing, a golf course like Royal. And that week I played extremely well that week and ended up winning the Heineken. I beat Nick O'Hearn in a playoff. I think we had 3 holes playoff, and poor Nick was on the wrong side of it, and I got lucky.
Was that? Did you play 18 East 3 times? Did you the 18th?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think I got up and down out of the bunker on the right hand side twice, and poor Nick's got to be thinking, well, I'm going to be winning here, and then all of a sudden a hole of 15 or an 18 footer just to keep it going.
Yeah, phenomenal closing hole and a great golf course. As I mentioned, Craig, I mean, you've won the Japanese Open, you've won the Scottish Open, the Italian Open, the German Open, the Indonesian Open, the New Zealand Open. Now it's your opportunity after a narrow miss by the looks of things back in 1990. 2007 Australian Open could be Craig Parry's time.
Yeah, well, that was one of the golf courses. I won the 1987 New South Wales Open at the Australian. It was designed obviously by Jack Nicklaus, and I was very comfortable on playing around the Aussie. And I'd been up in Japan that year, and I'd been working really hard on my game, and to come back and play at the Australian, and we had some ordinary weather come in, I think on the second round or the third round, and I scored low. And anytime you get to play the Aussie, I'm always comfortable in going out there and playing. And to finally win the Australian Open, our national Open, I'd lost the playoff in 1990, and I finished third probably about 8 times. It meant a lot to me to win finally our national Open.
Yeah, I mean it's an incredible CV with all those national Opens. It's it's unique, I think, to have that number. That's incredible. I mean, was that something that you ever set out to play national Opens, to try and bag national Opens? Was that a goal at any stage?
No, I've always just liked playing in national Opens, and I've always set my goal on playing really well in certain weeks, and the national Opens is just one of those weeks that I happen to play really well in. And I've always tried to peak when I've played tournaments. I find it better to try and play 2 or 3 events in a row and try and peak for the third event. If you have the pressure off you on the first week, and if you play well done, that's great. But you always try and peak and get your game ready so it actually gets to that third round or third tournament, so you can actually play your best golf. Because not being the fittest person in the world, or playing 4 weeks in a row is not the thing that I nearly tried to do. I always try to play 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Hey, and so obviously you're keen on your design. We've talked about Titirangi and Royal Melbourne and that kind of strategic design, and that having to play your shots to certain areas to access other areas of the greens of the hole. Paraparaumu Beach, of course, is very similar to that kind of thinking with Alec Russell design.
Yep.
Well, have you got a memory of a favourite hole and a reason perhaps why you like that particular hole?
17. I love 17 as a hole. You had to hit it down you had to sort of scoot it close to the right hand side with your tee shot to have the shot into the green, which is going to be shorter. But the further you went left, the better angle you had into the green, I remember. And the thing about golf course and design, I've always tried to have design where you can run the ball into the green. I figure that everyone should be able to play the game of golf. Doesn't matter how old you are or what skill level you are, you should have an option on playing the game. And the hardest shot in golf is to actually hit it straight. It doesn't matter if you're a professional or an amateur. And it just goes different lengths, that's all. Professional might hit a little bit further than the amateur, but as far as design work is, I try and keep my hazards to the sides rather than in front of the greens, or in the fairway. Put them off to the side. Don't make it so the good shot gets penalised. That really annoys the crap out of me. And a lot of golf architects really don't understand the game as far as playing. What a good golfer would want for reward. How they're going to think about playing it. And the work that I'm doing at the moment with the different golf courses, I've got 6 on the go at the moment.
Right.
Put my hazards to the sides and put them in the right place, and everyone seems to be very happy with what I'm doing. So, and I spend a lot of time there doing it as well.
Yeah, so you're quite hands-on with your designer. You like getting out on site?
Absolutely. I've just completed Bayview, which is not far away from us here. We did 3 greens and fixed up someone else's mistake. And I was there over the last 6 months, probably 4 months. I would go there every day and make sure that it was right. And if it wasn't right, I'd speak up and say, look, I want, the bunker to move across, half a metre. It needs to go, 6 inches lower, 6 inches higher, whatever it may need. And the same with the green. I would be pedantic. And I'm sure my shaper, he would have thought, well, this guy's been a pain in the ass. But when it's actually all said and done, you get a really good result, and everyone stands back and goes, well, he knows what he's doing.
Hey, interesting talking about 17 there, because in watching the footage of 2002, both yourself and Michael Campbell didn't get to the top fairway, so it must have been a reasonable southerly blowing. You were hitting 2 iron second shots. Now, That's 2002, so the ball would have been, new technology. I mean, look, talk us through it. I mean, everyone says, technology is starting to make some holes and courses obsolete. What's your thought on that?
Look, the professionals, they are hitting it a lot further, and it is making the game probably a little bit too easy for them. But for the amateurs, I think they should get all of the technology that is available. I have no problem on all amateurs being able to anchor the putter against the body. If it keeps people out there playing golf, I'm all for it. As far as other changes to equipment, the golf ball needs to come back. It's just going too far nowadays.
Hmm. Now, I know you mentioned your good mate there, Tony Buffler, who's also your manager. He loves getting across to New Zealand and playing Paraparaumu with his good mate Jeff Simmons. Two hard case characters. He's been threatening to bring Craig Parry across on one of those trips at some stage. So, Craig, look, we would love at some stage to have you back on our links. It's been nice to connect with you today, or reconnect with you today from a club point of view. Like I say, you've won national opens in 6 or 7 countries around the world, which is quite incredible. The one, obviously, as a golf club we're most proud about is your New Zealand Open victory here with us. And for that, Craig, you're absolutely deserving to be on this series as a legend of the links. So thanks very much for making time.
Thanks, Leo.
Great talking. Please take up that invitation at some stage.
I definitely will. I would love to come back and play, and very fond memories of New Zealand Open at Paraparaumu.
Thanks very much, Craig. Cheers.
No worries. Cheers, Leo.